So it's today, and it's another pretty nasty day outside. It's not raining today, but it is cold and windy, and it's nice and damp. The streets are starting to dry out a little bit. But I thought I'd go ahead and take this opportunity, especially since I was having this problem myself, which isn't anything new to me, to go ahead and show you a little trick that I know about, which I kind of looked around on the YouTube there, and I didn't see anybody else that had mentioned it. There's lots of videos about, adjusting your brakes and adjusting your brake pads and, changing brake pads and, excuse me, stuff like that. I've, when I was a little kid, back in the 80s when it seemed, when like Rad and BMX Bandits and stuff, it seemed like BMXing was really starting to take off back then. I was big into, flatland freestyle and stuff like that, basically all the way up until I started skateboarding all the time. And being a flatlander, doing freestyle and whatnot, the one thing you really need is some brakes that work good. And back then, there were no other brakes than just the chromey caliper ones, which nobody in their right mind would use now. But that's all we had to work with. I didn't have U brakes and V brakes and even disc brakes back then. So basically, we just had to kind of work with what you had, and after all the trial and error and stuff like that, I mean, really the main thing that it boils down to, and the big problem with a lot of bikes, is these painted wheels. Painted wheels just do not work, and the reason is when the brake pads rub on the painted wheel, it's rubbing the paint away slowly. I mean, what you really want is the brake pad to wear away, and that's when you're actually getting some stopping power. Obviously, it's a lot easier to make your rear brake, skid, especially when you're lighter. I weigh 200 pounds, so the heavier you are, obviously, the harder it's going to be to stop. So anyway, if you have everything else adjusted properly, you think you have what's good brake pads or whatnot, and your brakes still aren't working very good, and you have painted rims, that is probably why, and I would almost guarantee it. Something I did even back when I was a kid is pretty much what I'm going to show you now. Most of the time, after I was a little older and I was able to, I finally got some Areo wheels, which I always wanted for the longest time. My first bike was my sister's old strawberry shortcake bike, and I painted the thing black and took the banana seat off and stuff. But anyway, after a while, I finally got those chrome. I always preferred chrome rims just because I liked the way they looked. So for the most part, I didn't have a problem with the painted wheel thing. It was just the fact that caliper brakes just aren't worth a crud, you know what I'm saying? So anyway, these days, a lot of bikes come with painted rims on them. Now, the easiest way to alleviate that problem would obviously just be to go out and get some chrome rims. Myself, as I'm sure a lot of you, it's not that easy to just go out and fork out $100, $200, $300 to get some new wheels. So what I'm going to show you is the easy way to fix it, and I say easy, maybe I should say the cheap way to fix it, because I'll warn you now, it does take a little patience, it does consume quite a bit of time, and I would also, recommend not doing it the day you're talking about going out and doing some riding, because it does require quite a bit of elbow grease as well. And basically, I'll show you here what I'm doing is, I looked around and I didn't see anybody else really talk about this, but as you can see here, I've gone ahead and done this little section here, and I'll tell you, just doing that took about a half an hour or so, and there's just a decent amount of paint. They painted the rim, they wanted to stay painted, they didn't want the paint to come off right away, because then you think, oh, well, my bike's already messing up, it's not supposed to look like that. So, if you've seen a bike that's got painted rims that somebody's been riding for a while, you'll notice spots where the paint is coming off, and you can see the actual bare wheel under it, and that's, like I said, just because the paint has been wearing off, and that's why it doesn't stop like it should. So I'll just show you the little trick on how I do it here, and I'm using 150 grit sandpaper. I'm sure you could do this a different way. I wouldn't necessarily recommend using any kind of power tool, especially with the tire on the wheel or anything like that. Maybe if you didn't have tires on the wheels, using like a little mouse sander or, you know, one of them small square orbital sanders would probably work pretty good. You just don't want to put any pits or, you know, low spots in the wheel or nothing like that is the main thing, because that'll also affect your braking. So the way I do it is you get you a piece of sandpaper. Like I said, this is 150 grit. I wouldn't use anything real coarse because it doesn't make it go any faster, honestly. And then what you want to do, because you also want to end up with a smooth surface, so you're going to have to use something finer after you use something coarse anyway, so you just be doing it twice. But the best way to do it is you get you an old brake pad like I got here, or if you want, you can even, if you don't have an old brake pad laying around, just go ahead and take one off your bike. It's not really going to hurt it none. And then you just put it around your sandpaper here like this, okay? And then once you do that, you pretty much just start going to town on it, you know. You want to be careful not to rub your tire to death, probably. And, you know, this has got black spokes. Occasionally that popped off and knocked a little paint off the spoke, because that has nowhere near the amount of paint that the wheel does. So basically, you just want to go around, you know, and you're going to sand this paint off of here. And you know, I'm not going to make you sit here and watch me do this, because like I said, it does take quite a bit of time. But the other thing you'll notice is, as you're doing it, you'll have low spots in the wheel where the paint kind of stays behind compared to some of the other spots. That's the other thing. If the wheel's not flat, just like the brake pad, the more surface area, the better your braking is going to be. So I can guarantee you, no matter what kind of brake pads or what kind of brakes you have, whether it be V brakes, U brakes, caliper brakes, whatever kind they are, this bike here's got U brakes on it. It's got, you know, these pretty cheap wheels, probably they're you know, star circle rims or whatever. It doesn't matter. The main thing is you don't want that paint on there, and I guarantee that is the one thing that you can do that is really going to make a difference. So like I said, you know, you could, you know, and there's no reason you have to do it all at once. I mean, you could do some of it and do the rest later, and you don't have to get it all off. You could leave like these little spaces where it's not totally flat, and it'll still be better. But the main thing is, if you can get all that paint off there, that is really going to make a big difference. So I just kind of wanted to throw that out there for you. Like I said, I looked around a little bit and I didn't see anybody else talk about it. So, you know, the other thing is, if you have brand new brake pads, they're not always perfectly flat. So the other thing you can do about that is get you a little sandpaper. And you know, this is a new brake pad. I never even rode these pads, but even just with the little sand in there, you can see that brake pad wasn't flat to begin with. So more surface area, more braking. You don't want any junk all over your wheel or nothing like that. It's just going to make it to where it doesn't perform the way it should. So anyway, there's your little tip. You know, the other one thing I want to point out is, and probably better wheels aren't like this, but you know, you can see the seam in this wheel, and that also can be a problem, because basically right here it's going to make the brake pad skip a little bit or catch a little bit, and it's going to affect the way it stops as well. So using the sandpaper like that, when you get to this seam part, you'll be able to make the seam nice and smooth. You'll probably still be able to see it, but you won't be able to feel it, neither will your brake pad. So after I get mine all finished up, like I said, it does take quite a bit of time. I'll show you what it looks like afterwards, and you know, there you go. So that's just a little tip from an old guy. So until next time, I'll see you then.